Oh my god.
So, hey, what's up, guys? Rift Insight Season 1, Episode 5. And today we have an assortment of topics, and he is constantly banging his foot on the fucking desk, Mr. Sir. Ruining up the audio quality. Is that all you're good for? Is ruining my audio?
I mean, the audio is already filled with your terrible voice. I mean, there's that.
Okay, what? Your jokes are funny, but how was your week, sir?
Do you actually care, or is this small talk?
I'm just asking. I can't ever ask like how your week's gone. Like, what if I'm
literally 30 minutes before this? So
what if I'm genuinely interested in your life? Like, other girls are gonna be. Other girls are not gonna be genuinely interested. But you know, I might some days.
Ever since you have got that girlfriend, you've been so condescending in terms of girl stuff. I hate you.
Oh my god. So hey guys, assortment of topics this week. The LEC has been getting a lot more interesting. C9 lost to Team Liquid in the rematch. C9 beat them in week 3 or week 4, and then now TL took them down. Dignitas really do look hopeless, but then they obviously won against EG yesterday. So I thought to myself, okay, are they really this hopeless? But then I saw a few games where they just weren't contesting anything and they just chose to lose. And also, if you guys did miss my recent upload, I actually got a chance to interview my very first LCS Pro, which was Olorum. Now, as I watched it over, I do realize there's things I could have did differently. So the next time we talk, things will be a little bit more different and the things I'll ask. But I wanted to break the ice and make sure that he was comfortable, obviously being on the channel and making sure that he would want to come back. So, you know, I now know somebody that works in the LCS, which is a pro now, and then now I know the one person who works for CLG. So yeah, getting my connection set up, which is actually pretty cool. So I like that. So what did you think about my LCS interview I did with Olorum?
I mean, I thought it was interesting at the very least. Olorum is one of in my turn, if you're gonna talk to somebody like in the league right now, obviously Bjergsen, we know pretty much everything about him. Everybody is pretty old to the system at this point, but Olorum is an up and coming talent. I think he's shown some of the most versatile like capabilities out of a top laner because he's able to play weak side better than pretty much everybody, but maybe Impact and Lakers maybe, but for the most part, that's like not something you see out of a rookie too often, which is why I think it's an exciting person to pick up. Like he genuinely, I think Olorum is one of the best talents to come out of NA in a little bit since like Vulcan.
I definitely don't think he's bad. That's the thing though. He's actually overall a solid player. He just understands that he doesn't know, what his ceiling is yet because he said that every year he's been getting a little bit better and better. So it's always, up in the air about, where certain players can go. Because, like, we can see a certain player as, like, bad, but they know their ceiling is much higher. So that's usually how that goes, too.
I mean, it's hard to look at stuff in a scope of, like, we kind of just generalize stuff as we see somebody play like this, so this is how good this person's going to turn out. And that's just how we have to look at it. They have more of a perspective on their own lives. So obviously they're going to have a better idea of how they think they could turn out and like the improvements they can make. We can't really know much on the outside, but I mean, I think he has some pretty good qualities for a player. I mean, I don't know how good his carry potential is, but I mean, that's something considering he's pretty new to the scene, he could definitely work on. But as it stands right now, I've been pretty happy with him. Him and Insanity have been pretty decent. So.
Actually, people kept complaining that the LCS never tries out new players. This has been a split where the LCS is actually trying new players. You had Potluck, Insanity, Olorum kind of is still new because he played on Optic last year.
Well, let's look at the teams that did it. We have Cloud9 doing it for the most part if you count Vulcan, but I don't know. I don't know if you really count Vulcan. You count Blabber too. There's a lot of people.
Kind of, yeah, because he really. It's hard to count Blabber because remember he technically did get a full split.
I'm not saying he's a rookie. I mean, he never really got a full split because
technically he did. He started in week 7. Remember of like the LCS 2018 summer split. Remember how he came in for week 7 or week 6? No, week 5. We came in for week 5 after Rift Rivals, and he played every week up until then. Remember?
That's not an entire week. That's like half the split. But, I mean, he did end up getting subbed out towards the later half of the split anyways, so.
Yeah.
But the big thing about it, obviously, they have a lot of up-and talent. Like, Team Liquid has Tactical. We have Dignitas with Johnson. We have Immortals with Alorum, and Insanity. We have, I mean, there's a lot of people that are getting like, at the very least, they're getting chances right now, because I see a lot of the teams taking chances on younger people, and that's not something I've seen. I think this is probably the most rookies I've seen like stay this long inside the scene ever. Why are you so dark? What's happening?
Oh no, I have certain applications I have are on dark mode, like Facebook and other things, because dark mode is lit. There you go. Now you see me. Now you don't.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of good up and coming talent inside of the LCS recently, and I've been pretty happy with it.
So, what do you think about when people say that certain LCS players are kind of on the same caliber as Academy players? You know, there was that discussion where people were saying like certain teams in Academy could easily take off games of like LCS teams that are in the middle of the pack.
I mean, which specific one are they talking about? I've seen, from my knowledge, from what I've seen out of the Academy scene, if you put the best of the best players out of the Academy onto one team, you'd probably have a team that competes for like middle of the pack. Like, I honestly think they're better. Some of the Academy players are better than the lower pack. What's it called? There's not a difference between the lower tier LCS and the best players in the Academy scene anymore, in my opinion, which isn't something I'd say about most other regions. Most of the other regions are pretty solidified in the fact that one or the other. I mean, there's a pretty distinct difference between the two, but it doesn't seem to be the case for the LEC right now. I mean, for the LCS right now. I think
it's weird because if people think that LCS Academy teams are at worst decent or comparable to LCS teams, it's like, what are we even doing? If our Academy teams can beat the, their stronger counterparts, then are we developing talent? Because that'll be developing talent though. Because that's the point of Academy. You're supposed to develop talent to eventually be in the main roster, to eventually play in the LCS.
I mean, the goal of the Academy is to develop players that can eventually end up getting onto the main roster. And that's the thing about it is veterans should be brought on to teach the young people what is to be expected in the LCS. I mean, obviously you wouldn't use MASH as a veteran to train people, but at the same time, there's a few other ADCs and all those veterans you could bring in to teach them. But at the same, and there's also the capabilities of being able to bring in like the veterans. If they prove themselves, they can make it on the main stage, and that's how it works out for them. And then the young people, pretty much, they're going to get a lot of chances because they're pretty new to the scene. So there's not much I can say about that. I mean, I do believe in a lot of these players.
It just depends. Like, I don't know. I've been an advocate of switching out players when you have the chance to, because like if you never switch players out when you're losing to try and see what they can do, you're never really going to flourish. Because if you always go with the mindset of, this guy can't handle certain situations, you're never going to improve because you don't know what a player can handle in any situation.
You definitely get the chance to test yourself inside of the Academy scene. There's not really anything you're going to be. If you can't handle the Academy scene, I don't think you should get a chance in the LCS because obviously, if you can't even handle Academy level players, you're just going to be worthless on the scene. There is genuinely no chance to get to the next level if you already can't handle the previous level. I don't know how much I agree with that point. But I do think switching people out when you get the chance to, like Johnson was able to get swapped out into Dignitas out of like in terms of just swap, like they got rid of Cody's son from Clutch Gaming earlier. Like I think there's been a lot of good choices in terms of like I would switch people out if you have somebody who looks like they have talent inside of the scene. Like,
yeah,
there are definitely situations.
And then now we have Cord JJ as a front runner for MVP in most people's eyes now.
He's been incredible. I mean, like the Cloud9 game specifically, I mean, his Blitzcrank pretty much solo hand like carried the game for the most part.
I watched that game and I watched it about a few times. I watched the highlights first, then I watched the VOD. And when I watched the VOD back, it's not that C9 was playing bad. They were playing badly around the blitz pick. And definitely in draft, when you show your Sona and your Lux bot lane that early, that's the bot lane you pick later on. You should have set up for a counter pick, so that way you force out the support pick on Core JJ's part. They picked it too early. Like, I understand what they were trying to do in the draft, and they didn't even play badly in the game, though. I think people are getting the wrong assumption of how their game went, because that game went as Cloud9 as you're thinking. They were dominating the early game. They got a bunch of kills early on, but it seems like they're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're not really translating it to a win. Like they're halting at a certain point where like it gets to a point in the mid game where they have to do a certain thing to win, and they just kind of stop. Back in like last split, they were able to get to that point and then exceed to that position where you could get a Baron, get a Dragon Soul, because the game is really Dragon Soul dependent now, where you obviously have to get this Dragon Soul in order to win. And in certain games that they've lost, the reason why they've lost is because they're not exactly being excessively proactive to a certain point. I don't even know. Like, that's just how I see it personally.
So my big thing about it, first of all, is I think the fact is that Cloud9 goes in with a mindset pretty much every game. When you see Cloud9 doing something, it's the fact that they play to the T of how they're going to play each time, and they go in with a pretty much a solidified strategy, and they really don't swap off of that. That's my big thing about that. I think what I see for the most part with them is if somebody swaps them up, like they pull out a Blitzcrank or something, they don't really have too much to be prepared in terms of just preparation for that. Like a Blitzcrank kind of throws everything out of whack because you can't play the same way you would play a regular comp because he has so much ability to like make he has the ability to mess stuff up. Like again, when you look at the early game pressure that like in the early game when there was a gank through mid with Blitzcrank, Licorice was able to respond to that and kill
kill Jensen, right?
He killed Core JJ. Like
you're
my
right.
big thing about it is they know exactly they're smarter about the game. They were smarter about the game, the team Liquid. They were able to play around the map and were able to take advantage of a lot of the mistakes. But the picks that like Cloud9's not ready for, when you have to swap up the game, it really just you can't play a fundamental game of League of Legends with Blitzcrank on the enemy team. They don't know how to play unique play styles, it seems to me. Like they don't know how to play around unique champions. Like I think
that's going to be the problem going internationally. Like going to Worlds, you're going to see unique playstyles. Even wildcard teams have unique playstyles that are really, really bad. They're pretty bad, but at least it's unique to them, you know? So let me bring up the C9 TL game that just happened this week. That was a day ago. C9 versus TL week 7, day 3. Let me bring this up. Let me bring up the draft, because the draft, people kept complaining saying it was a bad draft. It was not a bad draft. What are you talking about? Like, I think people just don't know what the hell they're talking about. Oh, it's a bad draft. No, it's not a bad draft, because if it was a bad draft, you would not be winning this. They were winning the game. It's not like they were losing. That's the point, though. Like people,
I'll point out you can win with a bad draft. Bad drafts are not.
You can, but this draft isn't bad though. That's the problem. Let me. I can barely see you in your camera half the time when you do this stuff.
I'm an icon. Lean back.
You lean back. No. You used to be cool. I don't know what happened to you.
At no point in my life would I have ever responded that well.
All right, so guys, if you're actually watching this, then all right, C9's composition against TL, since this was the match of the week, C9 take Shen, Hecarim, Set, and Sona and Lux. So and TL also take fucking hell, Mordekaiser, Trundle, Syndra, Ezreal, and Blitzcrank. Now, I don't really understand what's the point of showing your bot lane early in the draft, because that will definitely give the leeway for Core JJ to obviously have them pick him Blitz. Now, the reason why Blitz was the pivotal point of TL winning was because if you hook in Sona, Lux, or even Set, they are going to insta-die, more or less so. And if you insta-hook Sona, she can't provide anything. She doesn't have any escapes. All she has is the ability where she speeds herself up. That's nothing. Or unless you have to automatically get it with Flash Up. So I don't think C9 in particular played badly in the game. The issue here is that TL's comp is better as the game progresses. Like C9's comp works as all of C9's comps do. They work early game. That's the point of it. But TL's comp works better later on as the game progresses, because you have the Ezreal poke, you have the Syndra long range stun, then you have Mordekaiser, which puts you in the Shadow Realm, and then you also have Trundle to speed them up. So yeah, I favor TL's comp on this one. And you know what someone told me? What about Jat is the secret to TL being successful? That's crazy, honestly.
I mean,
so what do you think?
I don't think Jat is the reason. I mean, they haven't been winning based off of unique play styles or anything, but just unique picks or anything. I mean, obviously the Blitz is a unique pick, but the thing that is really selling this team right now is how incredible I think Core JJ is playing. I mean, I don't.
But really Jensen is also playing good too.
Jensen is not nearly on the same level as him right now. I think Jensen is probably the second or first best mid. Like Jensen is a substantially better mid laner than Niski. Like laner, like not actually better mid laner, but better laning a mid laner.
Mhm.
If you get what I'm saying. Then
Yeah.
Niski, and I think that's the big. But Niski is obviously more impactful around the map than he is, and he's better in team fights. In my opinion, I think that's the big difference between the two. Like I think Jensen would probably be my pick for the best mid laner right now, but I think that the gap between him and Core JJ is still significant. And then
Yeah.
the rest of the team, obviously, I think they need to step up a little bit. I think Tactical's been playing a little bit better than like recently, but like Brox has been almost like worthless. I mean, he's moderately decent at playing like team fighting comps and all that stuff, but he really has little to no impact in the early game. Like it's kind of incredible that they picked.
Yeah, because you look at this right here, 14 minutes in, they're winning. This is a usual C9 game.
See, the issue here is they would be winning a lot harder if they hadn't lost the counter picks. Like obviously Blitzcrank was able to just destroy them right there because they have no one that's able to frontline and kind of push Blitzcrank off. They don't have any speed.
Like look at that. This is exactly how they play the game. They're not even losing.
It's not about that. I mean, they obviously had the worst picks here. Like the picks are what probably lost them the game.
Someone said if they had an actual ADC, it probably would have panned out differently.
I don't know about the ADC. It's more so lack of escapes and just two of the squishiest champions in the game early game. Like the Sona and Lux literally have some of the lowest base stats in the entire game, just purely based off themselves. Like, and you pick it into a Blitzcrank, which means you not only do you have no escapes, you have no ability to like if you get hooked, even if you flash, you're dead. Like you can't do anything. And that's pretty much just giving away the lane at that point. You're just kind of pushed into a passively farming lane. And then you get out scaled because obviously scaling ADCs are able to win the lane. Like scaling ADCs obviously late game output more damage because they're able to produce sustained damage at a higher rate than pretty much anybody else. Like,
Ezreal is considerably the best ADC right now after Aphelios has gotten nerfs on this patch.
I mean, obviously, it's not about scaling terms. Like, I obviously think he is not the best scaling ADC because he is reliant on how good your ADC is. Like, if you talk about the perfect ADC, obviously, I think Ezreal is the best scaling ADC. Like, because even better than Vayne, in my opinion, because he has a lot more self-peel, and the invisibility just isn't enough, in my opinion, to turn the tide. But I really do think that Ezreal might be the single best scaling ADC in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something you can he's not, sorry, because it's just so reliant on that. So it's not like they got outscaled because of the Ezreal or because of Ezreal's pick in general. It's because they had an ADC. Ezreal, obviously, at that point in time, since they picked Ezreal, the reason they picked it is because with Blitzcrank pulling onto a full engage thing and like pretty much no one else being able to peel, he has to provide the self-peel for himself, and that's why he picked Ezreal. But like again, it's not specifically the Ezreal pick that lost it. It's the fact that they didn't have the sustained damage to deal with most. Like again, it's not like what's his name? It's not like they had a massive front line on Team Liquid side. I mean, obviously there's a lot of squishies over there, but again, there's no one that seems to be dedicated purely to peeling for him, so he had to provide that for himself. Team Liquid. I mean, Cloud9 picked into a point where not only like they get shoved in by the Ezreal because he has a lot more push early on, and they also get that gives a lot of free roam to Blitzcrank around the map. He was able to get to a lot more fights early game because of that situation, and they can't contest any of the CS early, so it puts them behind a level. And again, the wave is always shoving in them. He got, I mean, it's not like the roams for the most part like mattered. I'm like, if you look at the roams, like a lot of them went in Cloud9's favor, like the roam towards mid, like the roam towards bot, and that one, the roam towards bot. Like there's nothing like Cloud9 played.
There's nothing there's nothing they did wrong. It was just the picks lost in the game.
It's just, I mean, Cloud9 was obviously more synchronized there. They had a lot more. They had a lot more intelligence when it came to playing around the map, but I mean,
I know I watched the game. People said they played bad. They really didn't, though. I mean, they really didn't play bad.
Team Liquid never wins the early game. It's just not. It's just a born factor that they lose every early game. It is. They play the game as we are going to get stomped in the early game until our team, the enemy team, makes a mistake, and then we're going to win. And that's how they play against every single person on the planet. And it's a terrible way to look at the game, but it's working out really well because they're in NA, so it doesn't matter.
So let's look at C9's schedule next week. Their schedule, C9 have actually, fun fact, C9 have gone 1-1 for the past 3 weeks straight. Actually, They've gone 1-1.
Not great for Cloud9, but again, they've faced some pretty okay teams.
I mean, teams are. I mean, credit to the league. It is getting a little bit better. It is like I can't just sit here and deny that to you guys. Like, obviously, like I like C9, and I will point out things wrong with them. And when we get to G2, I'm definitely pointing out stuff wrong with G2. I'm very, very disappointed in our performance. But right now, for the standings, if you guys don't actually know the standings, I will show you right now, obviously on the screen. C9 and Team Liquid tied for first, TSM third. So. Okay. So now with this change right here, you think we have a solidified second or first best team? Now we have two legit teams.
I don't think we have two legit teams again. There are major flaws inside of Team Liquid's playstyle that just require the enemy team to not only draft to a point where they're able to come back, but also for them to be able to execute their comp properly, and they have to not get lost too far behind in the game. Like, I mean, if you look at it, like. Solo straight up dumpster impact in their previous game.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. And Solo's not been that good. He's not been that good all split long.
He pulled out Renekton and completely put impact in the dumpster. It's just incredible to me. But, I don't want to give him Team Liquid too much credit. There are major flaws in their playstyle.
But there are major flaws in their playstyle, but they know what they want to do. They're
getting carried to the point by CoreJJ's incredibly decent play, and it's pushing them over the hump to being not a bad team. Like Team Liquid is obviously looking better than they did last split. Like if you even with like previous tactical iterations of this team in general just looks more solidified because CoreJJ is playing better. Like,
also, I think that removing Doublelift did make CoreJJ play better. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but it seems like Doublelift being a negative impact on CoreJJ last split really did make him like, oh my god, I don't have to play with Doublelift anymore. Thank God. That negative attitude was tearing me apart.
It was childish the way Doublelift went about it. It seems like even though I do think he tried to an extent, I think it obviously reflected in the fact that he wanted to be somewhere else.
It was that, and I mean, he wanted to, like, this is Doublelift's problem, and I didn't like the reason he gave. He was like, I wanted to play with Xmithy. This is the reason why Doublelift will never win Worlds, because he wants to play with players like Xmithy because they're his friends. All right, people who want to win things in their life. Let me explain something to you. Or people who have watched traditional sports in their life. Games are not based on you winning by your friends. Gameplay and how you play a game and playing the game at the highest level, there's not a range where like you should let friendships cloud winning. And I think that's Doublelift's problem. He wants to play with Xmithy, clearly knowing he has lost every single group stage with this person except one MSI, which was in 2019. They have lost every single group stage they've ever been together. They've never gone to groups before. And he wants to play with this guy again in 2020, knowing they've consistently lost together. That is ridiculous. No, I cannot take that. I understand you like the guy. He's your friend. That's cool. But the same thing happened with Bao Lan and Jacula from IG. They liked each other. They're cool, but they realized that, hey, like, we're not winning together. And it's not about friendship. It's about winning, and you got to be able to move on. And like that's his thing, though. It's like he wants to play with a player who's clearly not internationally capable. I don't care what he says. Xmithy's not that good internationally. And take Xmithy again to Worlds this year, you would still lose at a group stage. I'll put $1,000 bills if that'll happen.
I mean, I want to point out that going into the season when I saw Broxa was taking a spot, I was not excited at all. And Broxa is
you're actually one of the few people that weren't excited about the move.
Broxa was never going to look like a major upgrade. I don't even understand it. He's never been his play style to be something that Team Liquid needed. He's always been the utility type of jungler, and I thought it would be an upgrade. Obviously, to an extent, and it hasn't been. It's actually been a downgrade. But
that's crazy. That's actually
it would have been an upgrade previously with the previous iterations of it, but it has not been. Like, Brox has been completely negligible in terms of impact around the map, and it's been my least favorite part about him because, I mean, not only that, he just has such a boring playstyle, man. Like,
Xmithy and Broxa, I don't know, like, if I don't know how to explain it to people who are new to the game, their playstyle just feels slow. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels like they play the game like a turtle. And, like, that is just, like, the worst playstyle.
I mean, that's a lot of problems I have with a lot of junglers. They don't try to make the things happen. They try to support their team when they make something happen. Like, if you look at his Graves, he literally did not make it. He didn't even have like in terms of the game against who was it? It was the week before this week.
Oh, when they played up against
He played Graves one of the games.
Did they play against FlyQuest?
It might have been FlyQuest. He didn't have a single assist until 28 minutes in the game, and they had already fought 2 team fights. Like I don't understand. They had a dragon team fight. He didn't get an assist in it, and 3 of his team members died, and their enemy lost a few team fights. Like he just isn't impacting in any sort of aspect. Like
I'm sorry to laugh, guys, but I was essentially by the stats you are doing nothing. You were essentially doing nothing. It reminds me of Blank when he had 50 damage on a Trinity Force by 40 minutes. Good God, man. You can't make this shit up.
I mean, that's 100 Thieves. I mean, 100 Thieves is just, is boring.
Oh, that was against 100 Thieves. It was against 100 Thieves.
Yeah. It was against 100 Thieves, yeah. It was one of the most embarrassing. Oh, yeah, it was against 100 Thieves because someday he had died in a really weird way in that specific thing. Like, he refused to flash, and, like, there was a fight inside a top jungle, and he refused to flash away and got killed. Like,
oh
my big problem with 100 Thieves is the fact... 100 Thieves. Team Liquid is the fact that there's so many flaws inside of their playstyle that are pretty much perpetuated by the fact that they don't have an early aggressive jungler. Like,
this is what I wanted to say. If we had best of threes, because I've seen this type of game in LCK and LPL all the time. Run that back in the best of 3. Cloud9 wins that best of 3, 2-1. Because they weren't losing. That's people understand. They were not losing. They lost in terms of picks and not respecting the Blitzcrank. Run that in a best of 3. You are gonna get destroyed. Because that happened with the Hanwha Life series with T1. Remember, T1 were winning the early game, and then Hanwha had a better pick. I think they chose like Bard or some shit, and then they won. It was like, okay, this is a fluke. Let's just run it back, and then T1 won two straight. You know.
I mean, that is an impressive quality, and I think that it obviously defines whether or not you're a better team, but whether or not, depending on like if the team that's ahead is able to close out on you. Like, obviously, any team eventually is gonna lose the early game to another team because there's not, even though there's not always the biggest difference in terms of solo lane capabilities. Like, there is gonna be one of those games where you lose the early game, and that's just bound to happen. There's like a mistake somewhere or something, but whether or not you let this lead translate into something, or whether or not they're able to translate into something, is the big difference on whether you're able to compete with that team or not. Like, I dislike Cloud9, Team Liquid's play style for the most part, because it's just they have an early aggressive support, which would benefit a lot from pushing the pace of the game, but they refuse to because Broxah just refuses to contribute in pretty much any aspect. It's ridiculous. Like, I think Broxah is one of the nicest dudes. I've seen him talk and a lot of things. I think he's really intelligent about the game, but it doesn't translate into him actually playing the game for some reason, and that's something that bothers me a lot about him.
Broxah would be a great jungler back in Season 5 and Season 6. That is kind of like the tank junglers who stabilize the game. That's his thing. When it has like aggressive early game junglers like Graves and Lee Sin, you think, his bread and butter champion is Lee Sin. That's why I don't understand what's going on here. They might not be giving him draft resources. That could be a thing too.
It's possible that they're just forcing him on uncomfortable picks and he doesn't know how to impact the game, but that's not something you can really contribute to being a good jungler. Like, if you can't play all the picks that are meta right now, which is what they're putting him on, you just aren't a good jungler.
He's like, because Worlds, if it happens, it probably is going to happen. TL's going to have the same problem they had last year. They're too slow. They are too slow. It still boggles my mind how IG even lost to that team. That's why I said that was. I don't like to say luck, but I pretty much was luck right there. But hey, they play better on the day. But that playstyle is not good. It's proven it's not good now anymore. It's outdated, and it's not a rag on TL. I think they're an okay team, and it's nice to have 2 teams that are good. It's nice to have another team not exactly like Cloud9, but another team that's not like because it was basically C9 and everyone else. Now you have C9, TL, and then you have everybody else.
So you have C9 last split and C9 this split. Then you have Team Liquid.
Yeah,
that's essentially what's happening. It's not that the fact that everybody got better and that's the closing the gap. That did happen a little bit with only Team Liquid for the most part, and TSM might be slightly better, maybe. But like, Cloud9 in general has degraded a little bit in terms of gameplay, and that's something, like, again, it's not like Cloud9 against these players would have lost like 1 or 2 games last split. That is a reality of it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that these teams are able to do now that a lot of the teams weren't able to punish Cloud9 for. Like Cloud9 didn't win every single early game. Like especially against TSM, they struggled a lot against TSM for a little bit. Fnatic, is this the reason Fnatic kicks Brox? He was playing a lot better last split. The only reason they kicked him is because Nemesis was friends with Selfmade, and Nemesis was like the most used, like valuable player on that team for a little bit. Like he was probably the best player on that team last split.
Also, Broxa, their early game communication wasn't solid. You basically had 2 non-talking players in your mid and jungle role, and you need to have that. Like mid and jungle have to be talking. That's like
the only reason they kicked him is because they're friends. That is really, and on top of the fact that why would you not replace Broxa with Selfmade? Like,
yeah,
if Selfmade's willing to come over because he's friends with Nemesis, you don't say no to that. Like,
but I mean, Broxa wasn't really that good either. That's the thing. He wasn't really that
I
good.
said that, but I do think he was still one of the top 5 junglers. But the problem was
also, guys, if you are watching this as a VOD later on, just make sure you like the video. That's all I ask. Because it shows that you like what we're doing here, and it definitely supports. So just all I ask is you like the video. It's free 99.
If you're gonna do that, just do it at the start, man.
I know, but you gotta do it in what's that word? In the intermissions, you know?
That was an intermission. I was in the middle of a sentence.
But if you had a chance to play next to Broxa or Selfmade, and you had 2 gorgeous men looking at you, it's just like, I mean, who do you take? You never know.
This didn't have to become like some sort of fanfic.
But no, I just think that Broxa and Nemesis not having good synergy, they weren't talking. Mid and jungle are super impactful. If Selfmade's going to come over and be a better early game aggressive jungler, it's way better for them anyway. And I mean, it's better now. It was a weird idea in the first start of it, but then when you come around to it, Brox's pathing has major issues in it. It's just something that people just didn't notice because they just chose not to because they liked the guy, and that's just kind of stupid, He
didn't have as many flaws as he had before. I mean, obviously, I think that, again, I wasn't too hyped of him coming into the league, but at the same time, he was better. He was definitely better last year. Like, there's a significant downgrade in his play style, and that's just an obvious
Maybe it's
fact.
just North America. Maybe it's just NA. Maybe we ruin people.
I mean, it seems like they also gave more comfort picks over to Broxham when he was over on Fnatic. He doesn't get those very often here.
Okay, so anything we missed about TL taking down C9?
I mean, no. I mean, Team
Liquid, in a best of five, do you think C9 would just destroy them?
I don't know about destroy him. There's not a significant difference. I mean, obviously, I think that there is a few things Team Liquid could take advantage of against Cloud9, and I think it'd pull off that first victory. Who's to say they don't have a second cheesy strat? But
the thing is that Blabber has more of an early game impact than Broxa will ever have in most games, and that can be exploited in more games if you had a best of 5. But
I'm just gonna point out, CoreJJ has like triple the amount of ganks that Broxa does in most games.
That is sad.
He's just more often than not in ganks more often than he is. It just upsets me.
Wait, you like when supports are impactful? What are you talking about?
But I don't like when jungles aren't. Jungle has the freedom to be able to move around the map more fluidly than everybody else, and support obviously does have that because they're not pretty much gated by having to CS, and obviously they're not going to lose too much XP because XP is already like really like mitigated by the fact that they're dual laning. So
all right, so let's. What the heck is outside? What the heck is going on outside? Oh, it's just an engine. All right, so that's weird. Yeah, me neither. What the fuck? All right, so. Oh, wait, Ryan asked something. Though, by the way, if they respect Blitzcrank or have QSS for Mord's ult, then C9 will be unstoppable. What do you say to that?
To be honest, if they respect Blitzcrank or have a QSS for Mord ult, C9 will be unstoppable. The problem is that they built so everybody on that team would have been so stifled by building a QSS, which is the big problem. They built a team that just the carries couldn't build it, which was idiotic. Like you don't have an ADC, so like again. It's a good idea to get a QSS for the most part anyways, because it's just an incredibly good item, but it really just gates your ability, like power. It stifles your scaling. It like at the very least, it slows it down. On top of the fact, you really have a less impactful late game with it. So like at this point in time, like ADCs aren't going to be affected by that. So why not just take an ADC? Like Mordekaiser always like again. I don't think Mordekaiser was the big problem. I do think that was some sort of a problem, but the Blitzcrank was an indefinite problem. He got hooks. The tide was turned when they were trying to get the vision put around the map, and they walked into stuff that they shouldn't have walked into.
All right, so let's go on to the team you like talking about, Dignitas. So Dignitas, I mean, I don't even know what to say honestly anymore. They look hopeless. Is that the best word you can use? Hopeless.
My big thing about it is when they introduced Viper into the team, it seems like their stance on how to play the game took a drastic change. It seems like they went from kind of we're worse than everybody else, so we're just going to constantly gank and try and build up a lead to, and hopefully we don't make a mistake along the way, to we're going to play exactly how Cloud9 plays, and hopefully, even though we have worse players,
way worse
to do that. Because what they do now is instead of doing these kind of early game ganks, like where Dardoch roams around the map constantly and tries to get stuff going, and maybe sometimes he feeds, and if they feed, it's over. But you really have to take those chances when you're at this point in time. But instead of doing that, now they look for early game skirmishes, and they're not coordinated enough to beat these teams. They never build the team comps that are able to compete with these people. Like I don't get why they swap to this kind of play style, man. Like Cloud9.
But it works better for Dardoch overall. You want to give Dardoch the leeway.
Early game skirmishes are terrible for them because they're just not they're not as coordinated as other teams. They're not as good as other teams. They lose a lot of trades. Like Aframu, obviously, they're big. Like if you see a lot of their situations now, it seems like they're roaming around the map as a whole a lot more often, which is always a good thing to some extent. But I really, for just honestly,
Lord.
Specifically Dignitas, I don't think it works for them. They're not the type of team that is going to out macro a team early game. They really just need to mindlessly gank. Like, yeah, again, the Aframu was incredible this game. I think that's the main reason as to why they were able to pull this off, even though it counteracts their actual.
Hey, credit to him. Credit to Aframu. He's been playing really well this week.
Is probably the second best support. Third?
Around Vulcan, Core JJ, Aframu.
Core JJ is number one for sure. I think he might be better than Core JJ. I mean, Vulcan right now. Vulcan's had a few off games. I think his Bard was not impressive, like the one against. All
right, I don't know what's the point of playing Huni. He's just Kumo was actually improving. What's the point? Lord,
Kumo did have a really terrible game, and then.
But other than that,
so the way it works is you swap out consistent mid. You get consistency in mid, or you could get consistency in top. Why did you throw that last game? It's because again, most teams don't know how to play around a Blitzcrank pick. It's just a confusing pick to play around. It's just there's so many things that you have to change the entire aspect of your game. Like there's no hook champion in the game.
It's like playing Zillion. It's like when someone picks Zillion, you change your entire way of thinking about how you play the game. It's just one of those champions that you just do it for.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I still don't think anybody is as impactful in terms of like you have to play the game this way in comparison to Blitzcrank, because if he gets that hook, you're inside of the middle of their team. Like you're inside of this team, and you don't have the time to flash, because if he lands that, you're CC'd for more time than you're like. By the time you get unCC'd, you can't QS anything.
I just don't understand what is the difference that fucking Huni brings that Kumo didn't. Kumo was literally playing better. He had one bad game, but he had one bad game though. He had one bad game.
But Kumo did not bring what I think that I've seen Huni bring to the table to some points. Like Huni has brought a lot more to the table than Kumo has brought. I mean, Kumo's obviously a newer talent, and I think he might have pretty.
He has some upsides.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has some decent talent, but right now they're trying to make playoffs. They're trying to make an impact, and I think their best chances, obviously, with you can't replace Bang. Bang is the one import you have to keep. Bang is the best.
He's been playing really well.
He's the best player on this team. It's just without a doubt, Bang is the best player on this team. You can't take him out. I mean, so at this point in time, you either have to pick Huni, so you don't have to play Kumo, or you have to play
Golden Glue over
Jizuke. And Jizuke is more inconsistent than anybody else on this team. He's more inconsistent than Huni, and that's a talent. That just takes some talent to be able to do. Like Huni has been playing he's been playing champions that you really wouldn't see him at a Kumo. His game playing, even though he's made a massive amount of mistakes, and like just flashing, greeting for kills after he survived a gank. Like for the most part, he's been playing a lot more champions that you wouldn't really get to be able to play with Kumo. But I mean, the highs of Jizuke are a lot higher than Huni's right now, and I think that's
But
why
the thing is that at some point, the consistency in Golden Glue is not going to be what you need in best of fives. I think you want a player like Jizuke in a best of five. Do you want a player like Golden Glue in a best of five, though?
Do you want a player like Kumo? I mean, that's just the point of it. Who do you think is less impactful?
Fuck. That's the thing. Because there were some games where Jizuke picked Karma and literally went 0-5 every single time. That's a talent in itself to go 0-5.
There's two inconsistent players, and you're replacing them with a more consistent player if you play either Kumo.
But is Huni more consistent than Kumo is?
No, Kumo is more consistent, but also Golden Glue is more consistent than
Jizuke. Yeah,
that's the whole point of this. You get to choose between these two players, and you're like, who do you want to play out of these two? Like, I don't think either one of I just think EG is in a spot where I don't think they have many upsides. I think they should just commit to the Jizuke stuff because Huni, although I do think he brings some new stuff to the table, I think Jizuke is the answer to whether or not you can succeed. And he's the only person in this roster that I think has the talent to bring them to Worlds this year. Like,
okay, so we're going to have to look at Dignitas in a way. Can they still make playoffs, right? Right? I think, right?
I mean, they have 4 games left.
Can Dig still make playoffs? Anybody who's watching us, can Dig still make playoffs eventually? Like moving towards these last
one game out of 7th place.
Oh my lord! If they get into playoffs, they're fucking screwed. I could not imagine them winning anything.
If they get into playoffs, they can beat whoever is in the spot right above them. I can easily. They're not substantially below CLG or 100 Thieves. I think they can take a series off either one of those teams.
So let's go to everyone's favorite team. TSM. So TSM, they played this week up against CLG. Not the best rivalry in LCS. Don't let nobody tell you that shit. It's TSM, Cloud9. That's the best rivalry in the LCS. Hands down, anyone will tell you that. But CLG and TSM had their rematch where CLG basically gave them all the objectives and shit. And right here, you can clearly see that CLG still suck. Nothing's different. They still suck. Now, for this game in particular, they were actually winning to a certain extent. They had decent early game skirmishes. As you can see right here, it's always a customary 10-minute Rift Herald thing. And then Spica stole it. Spica steals it because it was early smite from Wiggly, or he may have used it early on. I'm not too sure. But what did you think about this game overall?
The reason that CLG doesn't struggle as much as they should against TSM is because their biggest weakness in a terrible jungler is negated by the fact that TSM also has a terrible jungler. So it's like they don't get that taken advantage of them. Like these are literally the worst two junglers playing each other in the league. Like that is something that you have to take into consideration. A lot of the weaknesses of CLG are pretty much perpetuated by the fact that Wiggly's terrible. Like, again,
oh lord,
Cloud9, TSM have a lot of strengths. I think they have some of the strongest solo laners still, even with the way
Broken Blaze playing
recently. I still think he's still one of the better top laners. But
I don't. So why do you put Ruin on Gnar? What is that?
Ruin,
do you give him?
Gnar does really well into Auron. Like that's just how the matchup works.
I think the Gnar pick is safe for Ruin because he'll literally feed on Gangplank too early for Gangplank to have any impact. I thought Stixxay had a few good arrows in this game. Like, Stixxay's not looked as bad recently. So, I don't know. They have very underwhelming players on their team. And they're not, but they're not exactly good either. And they're not really translating anything. Like, even when they're winning certain points in this game, they're still not really winning because they don't know how to really properly convert all their leads. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, look at this. Like, they kind of have an understanding about what they want to do. But, you never really exactly know. Like, Spica, how do you lose to Spica as a jungler? You must feel like crap if you lose to Spica as a jungler. No, that must feel really bad.
I think he was more so looking at the fact that, hey, I didn't lose as hard as usual.
Is that the goal for Spica? I don't lose as hard as usual?
No, that was what's his name?
It was this fight right here. I'm pretty sure it was this fight where they were actually fighting right here. So right here, they corridor TSM into where that blast cone is, and they put them in the the bounce house. Is that what they call it? Rowan had a nice ult. Then you had the Galio coming in. I mean, it was like they had good things about it as they were performing on this comp. So like I would say for CLG, give them this comp more or less. So
point out, that was the dumbest thing ever. They tried to do hard engage onto a spot where they can literally just blast coming out of it. It was just so dumb. It negated the entirety of Galio ult for the most part.
Right?
Like it doesn't make sense. It's not the place to fight at.
But why do CLG do this? Like they know how to play the game. You can see it from the veteran players, but it's just like blast coning, obviously negating the Galio impact of the fight, where we are obviously trying to have a bounce house, team fight. I just don't understand. And Kobe, he was casting the game. He was like, "Oh yeah, CLG are doing pretty well." I was like, "But they really aren't though. Like they're not playing as bad." And that's kind of what I'm seeing out of it. Like in playoffs, I'm still saying they're probably not going to make it, and it would probably be about, I don't know, maybe the 8th seed going in. Probably
they're in 8th place right now, so there's that.
They would probably end up facing Dig, and I don't know who wins that. I mean, take a toss up in that. That's just pick one at that point, But what do you think about TSM?
I think TSM is probably, again, they're the most definitely the third best team. I don't think there's anybody to compete with them on that. I mean, I think
right now,
no. I don't think there ever was. I mean, obviously there was at points where I thought maybe they're gonna be the second best team, but they just didn't. They didn't keep up with that. I mean, that's just not the case. I mean, they're not the third best team. I'm not really sold on them on that.
Sven sold everybody on the TSM second best.
Second best team, sorry, but I mean, I think that the highs of TSM can be the highest in the league. In certain aspects, but I just think consistency-wise and in terms of just actual macro play in the early game, they have the ability to throw the game into chaos, and that's why I think they match up well against Cloud9. But I mean,
if TSM go to Worlds, if they go to Worlds as a 3rd seed, and they go in play-ins, would Spica be a liability even against like play-in junglers?
Even against play-in junglers, yeah. I mean, I think he's just not as good as them. Like he's just not as good as look at the kind of play-in junglers there's been, dude. There's been Levi, there's been all these play-in junglers that he just couldn't compete with. And obviously Vietnam's not a play-in jungler team anymore, but they were before. I mean, there's I'd
be really scared if I was a TSM taking this guy.
Like all these junglers that I think, like I think if they went into as the 3rd seed, they'd struggle a little bit because like the kind of unique plays that teams were able to play in the group state or the play-in stages, TSM could never take advantage of, or at the very least couldn't exploit because of the fact that the early game pressure is going to be generated by the enemy team. Like TSM can't stop that. They have nothing to stop that. They only have early game laning presence, and I don't. And
that's decent at best.
I mean, the bot lane is obviously decent. I mean, treats and double lift is a pretty decent bot lane. I think it's probably the second or third boss. Third or fourth.
And it all depends on if Bjergsen is actually having an impact in certain games. It all depends on. So,
in terms of an NA/LCS, I think that their bot lanes are actually solid all around the map for the most part. I mean, like some of the top bot lanes, it's Sven Vulcan, like Core JJ, Tactical. You have double lifts.
Treats, Johnson
Afremu. You have really good 80s, combos in the bot lane. I mean, even the Wild Turtle bot lane isn't that bad, actually.
Wild Turtle Ignar? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the most part, there's just so much talent inside the bot lane in NA that I'm pretty happy about that, but that's really where it stops.
So what happened when we had EG and FlyQuest as like top 3 teams last split, and now they're just like, I guess, relegated to 5th place?
I mean, first of all, FlyQuest swapped out Wild Turtle for no reason whatsoever and swapped him out for MASH. And they said the big reason as to why they did it was a difference in playstyle, but they play the same champion, so that doesn't even make sense.
Maybe he has a bigger early game presence because Wild Turtle, like he has a tendency to just randomly die and int a game away that they're winning. Maybe that was a reason why. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, but MASH does that, and he also doesn't generate any pressure in the process. Wild Turtle, the only unique playstyle that I could see coming out of MASH is the fact that his playstyle is just bad. His playstyle is worse, and that's the only difference in their playstyle. They play exactly the same. He's just a worse player. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, right. So that goes into most of the LCS. What other games stuck out? Any other games stick out from this week?
No.
I don't think so, right? Oh, okay. So I guess that means we go to LEC in just a moment. I'm going to go and check YouTube for a moment to make sure if I didn't get to a certain game, because I definitely don't want to miss anything. Golden Guardians, I don't know. I just think they're just super underwhelming. I don't really know what to do and how to like put them in a certain predicament. What about 100 Thieves? So ever since they beat Cloud9, do you think they've had the same level of aggression or the same level of play, or no?
100 Thieves just genuinely got lucky with the Cloud9 win. I mean, obviously, when they had some unique. No. I really have never been sold. Even when they beat Cloud9 and didn't look that clean, like just genuinely, they have some sort of chaotic playstyle when they put somebody on a carry. If he pops off, he knows how to take over the game. And that's just the reality of why it can work out for them.
But I think Cody Sun offers a lot too. He's been playing a lot more better now that he's had Poom over Stunned.
I mean, he's still not great. Like that's just it's not the most impressive player. I mean, I think that Cody Sun.
You've always been a Cody Sun hater. You've always been a Cody Sun hater.
And I always will be. I'll never swap out
there. Guys, once he hates a player, he's like, I don't like this guy's playstyle. He's not Piglet. I hate him forever.
I thought Sven was better than Piglet recently. I mean, I don't know what you want.
I mean, that's always been the case. I mean, you know.
No, it was not last year. Sven was like the worst ABC.
In the spring split, he definitely played better than Piglet toward
no
the latter of 2019.
When they swapped Piglet out?
I mean, when they were playing him, obviously in clutch, like around maybe like week 5, Piglet fell off pretty much, or maybe before. I don't know, honestly.
I mean, that's because you don't know what you're talking about. So
he's just like, oh, he's calling me stupid, guys. He has great banter. All right, so let's go to the LEC, ladies and gentlemen. So this week, you would never believe this, but G2 almost missed making playoffs. I shit you not. If they had literally lost to Rogue, they were out. They were actually OUT out. And they actually won by Caps stealing a Baron. So I've been very, very sad in G2's gameplay. You guys know I love them, but hey, you got to call things like you see it. You can't be a fanboy. And a lot of the picks we're making are bad. You know, a lot of the early game decisions have not been that clean. I don't think the players are individually bad. I don't want to say that because I think that there's something still there. You can clearly tell they're not bad. But it's, you know, what happened early on in the split really affected them. All the drafts are kind of wonky. Like, the drafts kind of don't make any sense. You know, here, I'll show you guys right now, actually. Let me pause this really quickly, go over to here. Let me start, go like right here, actually. So I'll show you guys in a moment. So the issue here is that when you have G2 in a predicament like this, it doesn't make any sense because I think that overall, when you're looking at this composition, what I'm looking at is, okay, you have Wonder on a stabilized top lane carry, which is Mord. He can obviously lock up the Scion, so he doesn't exactly have, you know, that impact where he can get, you know, obviously his ult off, so you want to ult the Scion before he's obviously able to ult. Then you also have Jankos on Kha'Zix. Jankos is a really good early game jungler, so you want to have him on that early game aggression. Caps on Syndra, I mean, Caps on anything is actually pretty good. Either way, it's fine by me. But then you have Perks on Senna and Bard. So is Perks just supposed to be some sort of a supportive ADC? Because honestly, if that's how you want to play the game, then that's fine because Perks hasn't really played too well on pretty much any ADC pick. You know, that's just me being completely honest with you. Rogue's composition had everything going for them. You had the Aphelios pick, who was really strong by this point in time. You're at 28 minutes in? The Aphelios pick was insanely strong. I mean, Hansan was dealing an exceptional amount of damage. Then you also had Inspired, who was able to get into the back lines and obviously all people towards their team so they could kill them. Larson was playing good on the Azir. So Rogue overall should not be very sad about this game. There was a actual chance that Rogue could have knocked G2 out of the playoffs, and then Caps obviously stealing the Baron right there really kept G2 in the playoffs hunt, and it kept their overall season alive. Just keep that in mind. If you don't have Caps stealing that Baron, G2 season is over. Over. That shit is done. That shit is completely over. And like, I don't know what can they really do to fix their playstyle. Like, do they play early centric team comps where you're putting the big majority of the priority on Caps and Yankos? Do you do that? Because I don't really know what they can do right now to really solidify something. Like, if you want to play easy comps and win, that's fine. Like, I like that. You can play easy comps and win. But the fact of the matter is, Perks needs to just be on a supportive ADC. Give him Senna, give him Ashe, that's fine. He's not really having an early game impact or even a team fight impact. Like, I don't really look at ADCs for having an early game impact. I look at the ADCs for having good team fighting capabilities and positioning. Perks has been getting caught out consistently. He's been losing lane with Mickey X, which is, I would never have said that last year or last split exactly. So it's just, I don't know. Rogue should not feel bad about losing this game, though. They were not losing this game. G2 just had a Baron steal, and their composition works out better because if Kha'Zix can easily assassinate any one of those guys. It's just how it's going to work. And you have Kha'Zix at, late game, which is also a bad thing for Rogue's composition. But yeah, I don't know. G2 lost to Schalke, and they just need to get into playoffs. Just don't worry about getting first place or not getting that to split around. Just get into playoffs, and let's just hope they're going to be a good best-of-5 team. They might be a really good best-of-5 team. There could be a world where they have their worst split with this really great roster, and if they win the split, good God, these LEC players stink. Just imagine G2, Perks' tragedy, win the LEC split, being as horrible as they are right now. Just remember this. If Rogue win this game, they're done. You don't get G2 in the playoffs. So this could have been that game where Rogue is like, man, we could have really knocked out G2, but, well, he's back. So what'd you think about this game?
I mean, I first of all, I want to go to the point of just consistently giving credit to people. Like, there's some sort of there is not as massive a difference in best of ones and best of fives as you're making it out to be. I think that is a little bit extreme how you're making it. Like, I do think there is some sort of a difference, but if you're bad in best of ones and just genuinely not a good team, you're not going to be good in best of fives, because best of fives is literally the only difference between best of fives. You're able to plan accordingly in terms of just the pick and ban phase. Like that.
It's not even that.
It literally is what it is. That is.
You can see how the enemy jungler pass. You can see what they
entire of the year. There is no difference in that. Like,
but there's
I don't understand. Like, again, the big difference between best of fives is the fact that the pick and ban phase is able to be swapped up, because like you can change up your play style depending on how they are. That is the big difference. Like, you're able throughout the entirety of the year. It's not like you have more games to watch in a best of 5 than you do a best of 1 throughout all of the games combined. Like, you're still seeing their pathing in that. I'm like, they could change something up and they could be a little bit goofy and cheese you, and that's another big thing. They can't pull off the same cheese, but that comes down to the pick and ban phase again. Like, my big thing about G2 right now is the fact that, first of all, I want to say I don't think G2 has ever been an incredibly good. Perks has ever been an incredibly good ADC in terms of just ADC skills. He's always lacked what I've seen a lot of traditional ADCs capabilities, able to dish out a lot of sustained damage. He's never going to be able to provide that from what I've seen recently. So with Mickey X playing a lot worse, he's not able to cheese these lanes as often as he used to be able to. Like, again, I think his Ezreal and Lucian, more so ability-based ADCs, he's a lot more decent on. And that's why you see him on those pretty okay amount. But for the most part, he's not been too impressive on these full, a bit like auto attack based ADCs. Like, he's decent on Xayah, which is again another ability based ADC, but with ability to self peel. Like, he struggles on a lot of these things, and that's been something that's been kind of like shown in this season. But another thing that's the problem is that everybody's playing like trash. Like, if you've seen it, I mean, who's playing well in this team right now besides Caps? No one. Yankos is terrible. Wonder's been
junglers look worse when you have non-winning lanes.
But in theories, yes. But in practice,
this game,
you can see that he's playing worse. I mean, it's just theorizing all these things doesn't matter when the facts are right in front of you. Like,
junglers will always look good when you have winning lanes anyway. That's just going to be how it's going to work with any jungler, no matter what.
I say Blabber is trash. and I say Yankos is bad. I mean,
That's
I'll
because you're
say it for
stupid.
that. No, because you don't know what you're talking about. And the problem is that Yankos is just genuinely struggling right now. He's not playing as well as he used to. He's not like Ilana, like he's playing like in more so a similar fashion as Dardak has been playing recently. Like
He's trying
I
to
think,
force things he doesn't have to. There's just been very big, clear cut holes in their gameplay. That's just from what I've been noticing, honestly.
I do think that G2 still has the capabilities to pull off if they can bounce back to be the best team in this league. Because there is not a solidified amazing team in this league right now. I think Mad Lions is a pretty incredible team. I think Fnatic is playing a lot better now. So that like for right now, the two teams that I know for a fact, in my opinion, that are going to Worlds right now is going to be Mad Lions and Fnatic. And that's really the only two I could say these two teams are going to go to Worlds. Like the other two teams, I don't know enough. I'm not 100% sold on Rogue yet, and I don't have too much faith in G2 bouncing back yet. But I don't. The problem is there's not much competition to keep them out of Worlds. Like Origin,
They do look a little better with Jack Troll, though.
Origin looks trash recently with Jack. Jack Troll in the previous 2 games has died a combined like the past 4 games or so.
Maybe I forgot. Hold on. Maybe I forgot. Let me actually go see. Maybe I forgot.
Jack Troll started off the first 2 games. It was a honeymoon phase. I think he did
solid.
But the previous the next like games coming after that, he did terrible.
He played against Fnatic, and then he played up against Vitality. Let me see right now. Fnatic actually look a little bit better. They've been actually steadily getting better. They're fixing a lot of issues. They're not fixing a lot of issues. There's still issues, but they're not as bad as they were a few weeks ago, honestly.
I mean, I want to point out this is probably the best iteration, or best version I've ever seen of like how well Jack Troll played for Vitality. This is the best he's ever performed for Vitality, was his last game against them. Like when he was on Vitality, he was terrible. But now that he's on Origin and playing against Vitality, he's carrying them.
Is that even possible?
Well, yeah, that's just the point of it. If you want Jack Troll to be your MVP, you have to put him on the opposing team, apparently.
That's true. Oh, I watched this game. Yeah, they got like, good God. I mean, Vitality's not a bad team. They're actually a dark horse team. They have decent to average players on their team.
Vitality, I mean, I think Cabochard is always going to be my favorite top laner because I just love the way he plays the game. I think he's obviously, Alfari is the best top laner in the league. I think that's without a doubt. But he is just not this. He doesn't play the game in the same dimension as like Cabochard. Cabochard is he plays every aspect of the game, and Alfari is just genuinely just incredible in it. Like,
well, what do you want Jack Troll to do? Like, what do you want
to stop dying, man? He's just. It's not even that he's forcing engages and dying. He's getting caught out, and it's obnoxious. He's only playing characters with massive amounts of escapes too. He's just dying. Like comp is not playing terrible. He's not playing well, but I mean it's not his fault. He's laning with a person who's just consistently running it down. I mean he's running it down too. But
oh, you mean Labrov?
I said no. I said comp. What?
Comp is Vitality.
I mixed him up. Sorry. Stupid upset.
Upset, yeah.
You're talking about this. I'm seeing Vitality on the opposite screen right now. But upset is just. I mean, he's playing well, but he's not. I mean, he's just struggling because of the fact that Jack Troll's not providing anything for him. Like it's really just been.
But was Destiny providing anything either?
No, I mean, I don't know what the better choice is here. They're both terrible. But I mean, Jack Troll.
I mean, that was good right there, right?
What?
Oh, yeah, I forgot they missed that. Oh, I forgot. Oh, God, it looks worse now I'm watching it. Holy crap. I mean, are you being too harsh on Jack Troll?
No, he's playing poorly. You have to call out stuff like that. Jack Troll is making a lot of poor mistakes that shouldn't be happening from a veteran. Usually the mistakes in a veteran are like they're getting out mechanicked or something. But he's just genuinely making poor decisions, and that's something only Hylissang should be doing as a veteran. Hylissang at least has the mechanics to just like make that acceptable. Jack
so that was the.
Have it. He's just.
So they went 0-2 this week, didn't they? Because they lost to they lost to Vitality and they lost to Fnatic, didn't they?
Yep. I mean, Fnatic, understandable. Fnatic's been playing out of their mind in the past 2 weeks, and I think they're probably the best team in the league right now. But
over Mad Lions.
Yeah, I actually think so. I think Fnatic. I think mechanically, Fnatic. I mean, Mad Lions is probably better, but that doesn't really matter because I think the way I honestly think that Orome is gonna get beat down by the way Whippo right now. I think Whippo stepped it up a lot, so I think that's probably a big.
I mean, they gave Hylissang, they gave him a champion he can impact the game on early enough. They gave him Pike. I mean, this happens. Nuke Duck. I don't even know what this. Why I don't know what's going on with this guy anymore. It's just I've said all I need to say. The man is just not that good right now.
I mean, he's played a lot better. When they started doing better. I mean, he was playing better. I mean, it seems like they swapped up to giving him more impactful early game player champion. Like Corky is really a lane bully, and that's just something I think Nuke Duck would thrive on. But I mean, it just and again, he had a lot of decent engagements in that game. It's not like he was terrible. I don't want to say that Nuke Duck is a terrible player. I think there are some good aspects to his gameplay. I just think there's so many big flaws in terms of just how it functions in today's meta that I don't think he'd be a good pick.
So you have Origin running it down, losing 0-2. Fnatic on the upswing, and then you have G2 scraping by to keep the playoffs hopes alive. Hakuna Matata, as they said on Twitter. You know what's funny though? You know what's really funny? Schalke beat the last split 2 finalists.
That's their only wins, is it not? Fnatic.
And then they won the following game. Actually,
did they? Oh, they won the game after that.
Yeah. So it's Ottawame posted on Twitter that their playoffs hopes are alive.
They actually are. They're not out of playoffs yet, I don't think.
And is Gilius secretly good now? Apparently, I don't know. I doubt it, but
Gilius every once in a while just like I think that's the thing that I can't say is a pro. Like I think that's the big thing I don't want to take away from Gilius is the fact that he does.
Oh, they beat Misfits. Oh my God, Misfits have just
still
been
better than Fnatic. I mean, that's up to debate. I mean, obviously, I think that it's possible. I think that Fnatic is still mechanically worse than Mad, but I mean, Nemesis was the big problem with this team for the most part, and I think he stepped it up drastically. I mean, there are very good, decent amounts. Like, I mean, I still think. Let's see. Mad has a better bot lane. Karzi. I'm not Karzi.
It's Jarrett. He's in my. Oh, hi, Jarrett. He's in the podcast group that we do every week. Okay, hi, Jarrett. How you doing, bro?
I think that obviously Mad Lions has the best bot lane, possibly in the West. I think that their top lane obviously is a big struggling point for them. I think Orome is not as decent as I did. Like they put him on Jax against G2, and I don't think he was as impactful as he should have been. He wasn't even getting ganked that much. Shadow is incredible. I mean, there are some good aspects to Mad Lion, and I think all around mechanically they're the best team, but I do think they struggle in terms of just when they don't get a lane lead, and we haven't really been able to see that like recently because they're obviously always winning in terms of the early game. But I do think I don't know. I want to see I want to see them match up before I say anything. This is just what I think would happen. But I mean, obviously,
he still is not a believer in Rogue. He's just like Rogue is not good.
I haven't said they're not good. I just said I don't think they're on the same level as Mad Lions right now. I think Mad Lions is probably the best team. Even though Did you watch any LCK or LPL series? I watched what did I watch? I'm gonna go see. I watched Dragon X versus Genji. I watched that one. I know for sure I did. Did you watch IG versus IG versus Top?
IG versus Top.
IG versus Top was the most recent game from them.
No, that was a series I didn't see. I saw Genji versus Dragon X, and I saw T1 play Hanwha Life. So all I have to do is watch. All I got to do is watch the IG and T1 series.
Okay.
TES series. Yeah.
TES. I mean, who do you think are the best teams coming out of both those regions right now?
The LCK, Genji is actually improved on a lot of things. Like looking at their gameplay. They've actually improved
by Dragon X recently.
I mean, Dragon X is the best team, so you got to take that for what it is. But outside of that, they've actually been improving on a lot of things. It's just that Rascal is so shit still. Like, I don't know. Like, if they want to take their team to the next level and have that super team, they're gonna have to get a better top laner. It is what it is. I just don't think that you say you want to be the best team in the LCK and you have players like Rascal on your team and players like Life. That's not doing anything. It's like. Clid and BD and Ruler are really great players and mechanically insane, but pairing them up with like Rascal and players like Life. I mean, I get why you do that because you want to balance out the team. You don't want to have too many carries because too many resources.
It's not about too many carries, man. It's just he's a bad player. It's not weak. He doesn't play weak side well. Like you can look at Alorum, who I don't think is an incredibly good carry potential player, but he still actually is able to play the weak side well. He's not a bad player, and that is the difference between playing weak side and being put in the weak side. I'm like they consistently put Rascal on a weak side champion because he's not able to compete with these top lane like these best top laners. Like I mean, I think a lot of the struggles with Cloud. I'm TSN. I'm like T1 right now. Obviously, are like
T1.
Kana has not been playing as well as I'd expected from him. Again, they don't have the early game impacts because
they have no. It's like they don't. How I say this? Well, it's like they are not good at playing together. They're good individually, and it translates to their wins. They're not exactly on the same page, but they're good enough all individually that it makes up for that. Damwon's actually bounced back really hard, actually.
I mean, they were never a bad team. I think Damwon struggled a little bit, but they've always had the team that I think was probably the best potential out of the league. What do you think is the best? You don't think that Damwon is the number 3 team right now?
I think Damwon is better than Dragon X. I think Dragon X is so exploitable, but they're so consistent at their playstyle. They're just the more advanced Team Liquid.
My big problem with saying Dragon X is exploitable is the fact that you can have a one-dimensional playstyle if it has a lot of champions to pick through, because at that point in time, if you can't counter that playstyle by being better than them, it doesn't really matter.
Oh yeah, why did he play Quinn in this game? What is he playing Quinn for?
I mean, Quinn is just a pretty detrimental. Like he's just an oppressive top laner. If you're trying to smash the lane, that's probably one of the best top laners to do it. It's one of the only top laners that beats like Teemo. Like there's really no matchups that Quinn doesn't completely dumpster. But like I think the big thing about Team Liquid, T1 is the fact like they're playing around just like a what's it called? They're playing around a team who I don't think is succeeding very well in a rigging and pressure. Like they're really trying. Like again, if you look at this game, they do try and make stuff happen, but it doesn't really amount to anything for the most part. I think a lot of their ganks have been stifled, or they're responding to something else from the enemy team. You don't really see them take the initiative on this stuff. And it's
I forgot they subbed out QV. Thank God. Thank holy moly God. QV stinks, man.
QV I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's going to save this team. They're just not.
Oh, it's not. Yeah.
They're all around just a bad team. Like they picked up Layhands and Viper, and I don't think that was the most impactful thing. Again, they is a good bot lane to some extent. But I mean, Layhands is just a significantly better player than Viper. I mean, you have to pair him up with at least a better ADC than that. I mean, if you want to succeed at anything. But again, Viper is still a solid ADC, so it's not like you're getting too little out of him. But there's just too many weak points on this team.
T1. Like going into Worlds, people are gonna think T1 smashed Korea. It's not the case. I just can't
think that. I mean,
they will. It's just it happened last year when T1 clearly had problems in their gameplay, but they just smashed everybody. It's like no, they did not. They almost lost to Jenner at certain points. You know, it's just gonna happen with their team overall. It's just the name that they carry. They're gonna think that Faker was the best mid when he's like the 4th best mid laner in the league. It's just like
recently is people reiterating what the casters are saying. That's just the majority of casual people. Is the fact that most of them pretty much just regurgitate that Knight is the best mid laner and all that stuff. And I think that there's just so many other things that you could like. Mole is probably, in my opinion, one of the best mid laners too, but. Like,
Angel is actually pretty solid too.
It's just you can't really fault casual players for not knowing as much. I mean, obviously, no one's going to go in there saying that T1 is the best team. I mean, there's just not too many people who like. If you're thinking,
but you never want to count them out though. Never ever count T1 out of like any Worlds. Don't count them out of best of 5s. Never ever sleep on them ever. You don't ever want to do that.
Right now, dude. I'm not.
I can never count on T1. Even when they look bad, I'm like, this is still a scary team in a best of 5, no matter what. I mean, because like even when they look bad, they can still beat pretty much anybody though. That's not on their level.
I mean, that's the problem is that I mean, obviously they have Teddy, who I think is the best player on this team for probably the 2 straight years now, and there's really not ADCs in the world that can compete with him. I mean, with the retirement of Uzi, I think he's been the solidified best ADC in the world for me for a little bit. Like there's really just been no competition for him for that title. I mean, like there might be some people that are missing out on. I think Jackie Love is pretty solid. I think Jackie Love has just been one of the top 3 ADCs too, but I still think like in terms of just consistency and all that stuff, I still would pick Teddy because again, even in the bad games for T1, you still see him being the centralized point of power for this team.
Teddy and Effort are so strong of a bot lane, though.
I mean, I do think Effort's decent, but I wouldn't want to contribute the success of the lane to him. I think he's been decent, but I don't think he's a world-class support.
Really?
No, I don't. Interesting. I don't think he's. I mean, he's decent.
If they had, what about that one guy on Dragon X? If T1 had him, Kire, I could see T1. I could see T1 buying Dragon X's support. I could see it.
If they're going to replace anybody, I still think what's his name in top lane?
Kana.
Kana has not been as impressive as because he looked really good going into playoffs last split, but he's not lived up to that hype that I was hoping he'd continually put down. Like he's struggled a lot recently. Like, ooh,
guys, for a future series for the LCK, for me to try and get the LCK going, I might just I have something planned for the LCK. But when the LCK ends, we're gonna have a episode like this, which is all dedicated toward the LCK before it starts playoffs. It's kind of like what we usually do anyway, but it wasn't like as formatted. So also, next week I want to do a jungler, mid laner, top laner, supporter, ADC power ranking. I think it'd be much more easier if we did junglers because that's probably the more easiest one to do. We'll do a LCS jungler tier list. Like you have Blabber and S tier, and there's everybody else. Not just kidding. You would have
Blabber's probably the number one jungler. As much as I don't want to say that. But there is not an S tier jungler in the LCS right now.
That's probably what I would do, honestly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I have some stuff for the LCK and the LPL, guys. It's just so hard watching all these people. I try to keep up with everything as possible. And like I think that in the LPL, as I'll touch them a little bit. FPX, oh my god, I don't want to watch their games that much anymore. It's very uninspiring watching them. It's like they had their little 5 minutes of fame, and now they're getting exploited. That's kind of how I see it. You can see it differently. They had a really good... the meta shifts were not beneficial to them. They never really exactly had the best players in every single position. They just worked together really well. Kind of like G2 from last year as well.
I think the big problem in terms of meta is the fact that it's been... like the actual impact that bot lane has had has been a lot bigger. Because, I mean, LWX has never been an incredibly good ADC. I mean, that's always been the struggling point that I think has been for them. Even the top lane with Gimgoon has never been that bad because he's a solid weak side top laner, which is something that you don't need. It would be nice to have a carry on that team, and LWX has never been able to provide that. Even in his Worlds performance where he didn't die, he still wasn't a great ADC. I mean, I just have never been sold on him. I think that Gimgoon is still fine on this team. I think it's obviously been working out a lot more than Khan has. So, I mean, I think you would probably keep it that at this point. But for the most part, I think there's not really much I could say in terms of just how much I'm. It's like if you want to fix this team, you need to replace the ADC. I mean, that's just the weakest point of the team at this point. And it's one of the biggest aspects of this meta right now is getting I
try to watch as much games as I can. And when I do watch FPX, it's just not the same anymore. It's like they're making clear-cut early game mistakes that they wouldn't have made last year, but that is a benefit of like remember people, Doingby was not good good enough as like a player like Rookie or a player like Angel or a player like is the mid laner for OMG Icon? Or is that the top laner?
What?
It's OMG's mid laner Icon, right?
Are you talking about on OMG?
On OMG. Is he
on OMG?
I'm pretty sure Icon's on OMG. OMG's on OMG has Icon, I'm pretty sure. That's their top laner. I forgot. But like I think the mid laner on OMG is better.
OMG Icon is literally he's the mid laner.
Okay, I think he's better than Doingby. I think Fofo on BLG is better.
Trash, dude.
Fofo's better. Fofo's better mechanically than Doingby.
It's not true. He's literally the worst mechanical. He's the worst decision making. Literally,
Yagal's better than Doingby.
He is a worse Zoe than Golden Glue is. And that's not even a joke. Fofo is literally worse at Zoe than Golden Glue is.
Okay, maybe not Fofo. What about like Yagal?
If you want to talk about the best top laners in the league right now, it's Knight.
Mid laners.
Then I think Mole. Then I think like it pretty much it goes down from there. I think those are the top two solidified.
Rookie's been playing out of his mind though.
Rookie's been playing well too. But I think the top two are obviously pretty solidified. I think Rookie's up there too. But like, I don't think Doingby is as bad as you're making him out to be. He is mechanically weak, but he's not insanely weak to the point where it's exploitable. I think who has exploited him? What lane
I think if Bjergsen faced him, I think Bjergsen could beat him.
He could, but that doesn't matter because
that's sad because that's Bjergsen to a world-class, world championship winning mid laner. Like,
you know what? If you want to point out, Bjergsen would probably beat Nemesis too. So you can keep saying like you could trash all you want. Bjergsen's a solid top lane, mid laner.
Tetramon was Tetramon on World League, right? Or Teachermon? Teachermon's not. He's pretty solid overall, right? Very solid mid laner.
That was one of the strongest points of their spring split, but I don't think he's.
He's kind of stuck on Karma duty right now. So, good God, I wouldn't wish playing Karma on my worst enemy. But I just think that they had the meta shifts. They weren't exactly the best team. It's like the meta really complimented them. But I think that right now, I still think JDG has gotten a lot better. People still think JDG is bad. No, they've actually improved quite a bit. They're actually 8-2. So
I mean, JDG has been struggling a lot recently. The best teams in the league right now, I think, in terms of just the most solid, I think. Like, honestly, it might be IG.
Oh, V5. V5 has a pretty strong team.
Yeah. They're a top 5 team. I mean, they just got beat by IG just purely based on it was a really close series for the most part, but I think IG has really pulled it back together. They beat 2 of the top 3 teams standing wise.
RNG looks so lost without Uzi. It's not even funny.
Like, I mean, the worst team in the top 5, I mean, in playoff position right now, I think the last place team is probably Suning. Like, I do like Suning as a team. I think their objective control based style is interesting enough. But
I mean, they have Sword Art. Huanfeng, Angel, SOFN, and Bin. So it's like they have a good team. They have a solid team. But if SOFM doesn't contribute any early game impact, then it just doesn't really do anything. Like their team solely focuses and relies on SOFM and Sword Art providing early game impact. That's their team.
They're a team that forces skirmishes around objectives early on because they will literally get 4 dragons before 20 minutes happens because they really do prioritize it. And I think that's one of the most they're really one of the most unique teams in that aspect because that's been most of their success has been trying to force out a better engage on the enemy team in terms of just like in the extreme early game. And I think that's something like they're not a ganking style team, but they are somebody who I think still has early game like a pressure. Like, I mean, if you see some of the games that succeeded on early in the season, I think that
I watched the OMG game. I watched that.
SOFM literally didn't ever gank, and there were really no fights. But they forced the enemy team to fight them like before mid game because they had to contest those early dragons after a while.
There was the game where he played Trundle, and he was like 2-0 early on, and he was just running away with the game. I was like, what is this?
SOFM? SOFM is not as good as he used to be. I think he's still one of the best. I think a pretty solid jungler, but. I think his understanding of the game is definitely not to the level at which it was probably like 2 seasons ago. Like, I'm a little bit sad about that, but I mean that's just the reality of how long people stay in their primes. I mean, how many people are still in their primes after 2 to 3 years? Like,
not a lot.
There's not too many. Yeah. Like Faker wasn't in his prime anymore. There's just been a lot of players like that.
But yeah, that pretty much solidifies it. Next week we will have our NALCS jungler tier list, and I guess week to week we'll try and throw it up there actually. But yeah, anything else you want to say before we close out? That I'm a god at league knowledge, right?
What do you want me to say to you, man?
All right, cool. And now, hope you guys enjoy the new overlays. I'm always trying to change stuff up. If you guys notice the MSK thing icon up here, that's because that's the main channel, but I stream. Obviously, through my it goes through StreamYards, but I'm just trying to make sure the presentation of the show looks differently. And yeah, that pretty much solidifies it. And I'll see you guys later. See you next week. This is every Monday. The timing is always depending on his time because I'm free anytime on Monday after like a certain amount of time. I want to try and make this show earlier. I really do. I want to see how the viewership will be earlier on, but we'll see how it goes. That's it. If you guys are watching this as a VOD, just make sure you like the video. It's all I ever want. And that is it. Intro out. Nightwing, Way of Life Esports is signing out, guys. Peace.
Goodbye. All for one.